If you've spent any time in personal finance circles online, you have absolutely seen the debate. People get so passionate about Navy Federal Credit Union. On one side, you've got fiercely loyal members who swear by it. On the other, you have folks saying it's just a shadow of its former self. So, what's the real story? Let's dig in and separate the hype from the reality.
First things first, let's bust the biggest myth out there. So many people just assume, oh, I can't join, I'm not in the military. They just roll themselves out without even checking. But you know what? This club is way, way bigger than most people think.
I mean, look at this list. It's huge. Of course, you have active duty, veterans, and Department of Defense employees. But then it branches out to their parents, their grandparents, spouses, siblings, kids, grandkids. And here is the real kicker, the one that blows people's minds. Even household members and roommates. Yeah, you heard that right. If you live with a member, you can get in. The door is way wider than you'd imagine.
Okay, so once you're in, what's the big deal? Why are we even talking about this? Well, there's a reason nearly 14 million people aren't just members, they are true believers. Let's get into the hype. This right here from a Reddit user really nails one of the biggest reasons: customer service. Think about the last time you had to call your bank. Now imagine getting a helpful, friendly person in the US every single time. That alone builds an incredible amount of trust and goodwill. And that trust isn't just based on friendly phone calls. It's built on real action. When government shutdowns threatened military pay, Navy Federal stepped up and paid them anyway. They're famous for being that second chance lender, giving people with so-so credit a shot when nobody else will. And members just rave about how fast their loan process is. We're talking funds in your account like overnight. And then there's this, $80,000. That's the max combined credit limit you can get on their cards. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, if you're trying to build or improve your credit, having a high limit is a game changer for your credit utilization ratio. It's a massive perk. And this isn't just some theoretical number that nobody gets. Listen to this. A user simply sent them a secure message asking for a credit line increase. Their limit went from $2,000 to $23,000 in 48 hours. That's the kind of story that fuels the legend.
Okay, so far it sounds pretty incredible, right? But, and this is a really big but, the story gets a lot more complicated. For every one of those glowing reviews, you can find a story of pure frustration. The Navy Federal experience is not universal.
So let's pivot to the reality check, because there's a growing feeling, especially among people who've been members for a long time, that the credit union they fell in love with isn't the same one that exists today.
This quote from a 25-year member just cuts right to the bone. It captures this feeling of betrayal almost perfectly. The sense that Navy Federal has lost its way, that it stopped putting members first and now just acts like any other giant faceless bank. And you see this disconnect between the promise and the problem pop up in some really maddening ways. They're praised for their tech, right? But their new members sign-up page was broken for months. They're famous for home loans, yet we found stories of home purchase deals completely falling apart because they allegedly used the wrong appraisal rule. And that website issue wasn't just a 24-hour glitch. This comment, update, still broken, came after weeks and weeks of people trying and failing to join. For an institution with billions of dollars, having your front door literally broken, that's a really bad look. Okay, now for a reality check that hits you right in the wallet. Their savings rates. Let's be blunt, they're terrible. If you put $2,500 in their basic savings account, you'd earn a whopping $6.26 in a year. That same money in a pretty standard high-yield savings account could have earned you almost $90. That's not a small difference. You're actively losing buying power by keeping your savings there.
All right, let's talk about a service that causes a ton of confusion and controversy. OUPS. It stands for Optional Overdraft Protection Service. On the surface, it's a safety net to cover you if you spend more than you have. But you have to understand how it works and, more importantly, what it costs. And those costs can be steep. If you use OUPS, it's a $20 fee for that day.
If you have no protection at all, you could get hit with a $29 non-sufficient funds fee for every single transaction that gets returned. The best option by far is the free transfer from your savings, but that only works if you actually have money in savings to cover it.
Here's another one of those hidden landmines, your credit score. You probably use a service like Credit Karma and think you know your score. But most banks use a model called FICO Score 8. Navy Federal often uses a different one, FICO Score 9, and because FICO 9 weighs things like medical debt differently, your score can be 30 or more points lower. That difference can be the reason you get unexpectedly denied for a loan.
And sometimes these issues can combine into an absolute financial catastrophe. This story from user Defenestre is a true nightmare. They tried to use the gap insurance that came with their credit card. They claim Navy Federal not only mishandled the claim, but then turned off their credit card, which sent their debt-to-credit ratio through the roof and completely cratered their credit score. It's a story of a system that, instead of helping, created a devastating downward spiral. So, how do we square this? On one hand, you have the loyal cheerleader with amazing service and life-changing credit lines. On the other, the betrayed member caught in a bureaucratic nightmare. It's like a tale of two completely different banks. Now, this is fascinating. A user who claimed to be a 15-year employee offered a potential explanation. They suggested that leadership has shifted its focus to cold, hard analytics, to the numbers on a spreadsheet, instead of the people. That the famous motto, "Our members are the mission," has become just that, a motto, not a practice. All right, we've explored the glowing hype and we've stared into the harsh reality. It's time to bring it all together. Let's create a final scorecard to help you figure out if Navy Federal actually makes sense for your financial life. So, who is this really for? When you look at it this way, a clear picture emerges. Navy Federal could be amazing for you if you're building credit and need those high limits, if you value that US-based customer service above all else, and if you have average credit and need a lender who'll give you a chance on a conventional or VA loan. But you should probably look somewhere else if you're a rate chaser looking for the best return on your savings, if you can't stand clunky websites, or if your financial past is complicated. They also don't do FHA or USDA loans, which is a big deal for some homebuyers. It's all about knowing which column you fit into. So in the end, we're left with this question. It seems there really are two Navy Federals. For some, it is absolutely still that trusted financial partner, a place that offers incredible opportunities. But for others, it has become just another corporate giant that has lost its connection to the mission. The real question isn't which one is true. They both are. The question is, if you join, which Navy Federal will you get?